it was emotional. Emotional. And that's what this hobby's really about, right? This is the Geshelli Labs J2, the 4499 version. This is one of the first DACs available using the 4499 AKM chipset. Is it better than the 4493 DAC that I hyped up? I don't know. Let's find out together. So sit down, grab a cup of coffee, and let's talk about this new J2 DAC from Geshelli Labs. So we have a lot to cover today, so I'm just going to go briefly over how this works and the pricing. So if you're familiar with the J2 at all, you can get it in wood or you can get it in aluminum. Aluminum is cheaper. There's a bunch of different wood types to choose. On the front, it's pretty straightforward. You have a coaxial input here with an optical input here. You have two buttons for operation. This is power. This also turns on your LED. This button right here switches input. So it'll be either USB, optical 1, optical 2, coaxial 2, or coaxial 1. You don't need to get the USB if you don't want to, and that drops the price by $5. $50. Why? I don't know. On the back, you have balanced XLR out as well as single-ended RCA outputs. Then you have your other optical, your other coax, and then if you want, your USB right up here. They made this one special for me, which is very nice. Pricing, it varies depending upon how you spec it out. If you're just going for the stock Texas Instruments, the OPA 1656 op amps, and they're 3 op amps. So if you're going stock op amps, aluminum case, and no USB, that starts around $430. If you go fully spec'd out, you get the USB and you can get Sparco's op amps. The aluminum version is $637. Now, if you want wood, it's going to be extra. If you're only going to use the RCA outs, you don't have to upgrade all 3 op amps, and that would drop the price down to $560, even adding the Sparcos. Okay? Okay. When I walk out of the house, there's one thing I always have with me: a pair of wireless earbuds. And the noise canceling earbuds I use personally every day are a pair of Soundcores. These are the Liberty 4 NC. A couple of cool things about these wireless earbuds: they reduce noise by up to 98.5%, and they have an adaptive noise canceling feature, which means they're constantly taking samples of the outside world and then tailoring your noise canceling exactly to the ambient environment you're in. The other thing about earbuds, oftentimes you have to charge them. The Liberty 4 NCs can get up to 10 hours of playtime off of one charge. And then when you put them in their handy dandy charging case, you can get up to 50 hours with just the case. Yep. And you just have to charge them for 10 minutes. And then you get to 4 hours of use. I love quick charge features. The Soundcore Liberty 4 NC also comes with LDAC Bluetooth. These come with me every day now. Comes in 5 different colors. They're $99.99. So run on over and check out the Soundcore Liberty 4 NC. Links in the description. Thank you so much, Soundcore, for making this video happen. Okay, partnering equipment. Where did I listen to the J2 at? Well, I listened to it with the Arco 3 Pro and my headphone rig initially. But I wasn't listening to the J2, I was listening to a pair of headphones. So I was kind of waiting for my in-depth evaluation on speakers. Why? Because part of the J2's magic is on speakers, because it's with Soundstage. And I don't think that you can get a true appreciation for what these components can do when you're listening to headphones. So in the living room, I had this connected to the Emotiva RMC1L, which is a surround processor. However, I was going balanced out of the J2 into the balanced analog section of the RMC1L, running in reference stereo mode. that was going out to a pair of boo cards. And powering the boo cards was an XPA Gen 3 from Emotiva. And then I had it in the office because I got kicked out of the living room. In the office, I had a Weem, and I had a Weem running into it in the living room too. Anyway, Weem running into that, then into the PT2 from Emotiva, which is a preamp, into a pair of the A1 monoblocks from Emotiva, into a pair of the B2 Plus from Emotiva. Whew, that's a lot. The Chipset. This is a bit of a different animal. So I've heard 3 different versions of the J2. The new 4499 actually has 2 chips. So it has a 4491 AKM chip, and then it has a 4499 chipset. Now, anything that I say from now moving forward is because I watched a video, an interview from Passion for Sound with Gino and Sherry. So here's the takeaway for a dumb guy like me. The 4499 works in tandem with the 4491. There is a bit of a separation in duties to where one of the chips is kind of handling all of the digital duties. One of the chip is more involved with the analog duties. So you're getting a Delta Sigma chip, which is like the 9026, the 9038 Q2M, pretty much the 4493, pretty much all DACs, with the exception of multi-bit DACs and the exception of R2R DACs, use a Delta Sigma chip. So they have a Delta Sigma chip in here and also a multi-bit chip. I'm probably grossly simplifying this, but the takeaway is there's 2 chips. 2 is better than 1 normally, right? And in this case, yes, it's definitely better than 1. The 4499 DAC is also current based, where the 4493 was voltage based. And you can tell because the 4493, the AKM J2 4493 edition, has a bit of a lower output compared to its Saber brethren, or its 4499 bigger brother. So to do a A/B test between the 4493 version and the 4499 version, I had to put 2 Weems on there linked, but I actually had to do a little bit of digital volume manipulation to get the outputs as close as possible so that when I switched them back and forth, I wasn't hearing a huge volume disparity. So the takeaway here is the 4499 is louder at its highest gain setting than the 4493 version is. So when I talked to Geshelli Labs, they said they're sending out not only the Sparkos op amps, but also the Burson op amps and the stock Texas Instruments op amps. So we had one of these. This is a Sparkos op amp. I also had one of these, which is a Burson Audio. This is the V5i-D. Now the J2, the 4499 socketed version, comes with 3 op amp sockets. So I had 3 of the Bursons as well, in addition to 3 of the stock, I don't know what the model number is, but it's a good one. So I got to listen to the new 4499 J2 with not 1, not 2, but 3 different op amp options. And guess what? There's a difference with all of them, because when I talked about the voltage based or current based, apparently if you have a current based DAC chip, you can affect the sound to a greater extent by changing the op amps. And that was my experience. All of my different evaluation of the op amps was done in the living room on the Emotiva RMC1L on the XPA Gen 3 through the Buchard's P300. I started listening to the Sparkos, and then I switched to the Burson, and then I switched to the TIs because my J2 actually came with a Sparkos installed. What you're getting if you get the stock op amps is a very clean, very dynamic, with a broad soundstage. Very good. Sounds very similar to an OM5E or an OM10 cartridge if you're into vinyl from Ortofon. Now with the Burson, things warmed way up. Bass was bigger, but yet less cleanly defined than the TI chips. Vocals were more robust. Everything was just a little bit warmer, more romantic. I felt like soundstage was somewhat similar, but if I'm making another cartridge analogy, the Burson would be very similar to the Nagaoka MP110. So if you have a very analytical system, or if you're running something like the Fozzy Audio V3, choosing the Burson op amp might be a very good combination to get a little bit more synergy. The TI chip is probably good for pretty much any system. However, if you're running something more affordable like the Sony SSC S5, I can see the Burson being a better partner than the TI. The TI might be a little bit too much information on a very exciting leaning speaker. But then I put the Sparkos back in. Oh my. The Sparkos were more dynamic than the TIs. The soundstage was bananas big. Forward to aft imaging was spectacular. I can't really say enough about the Sparkos op amps. Now, that's running them through the Buchard P300, so your mileage may vary depending upon what system and depending upon what speakers you have hooked up to it. But at the end of the day, the Sparkos stayed in the J2 until I had to compare it to the J2, the AKM 4493, because I don't have a socketed op amp version of the 4493. So the TIs went back into the 4499 and I brought everything in here, level matched it the best I could, and then A-B'd it. Differences between the 4493 AKM and the 4499 AKM. Well, obviously the output level is a little bit different. If I'm painting with really broad strokes here very quickly, the 4499 with the stock Texas Instruments op amps has a soundstage that's probably 25 to 30% wider. It has better forward to aft imaging. The center image seems to be a little bit higher with the 4499. Instrument separation is greater with the 4499. Not a huge leap forward. I think the biggest difference between the 99 and the 93 is soundstage imaging, placement in space, immersive experience. Again, if you're listening to it on headphones, you're not going to be able to appreciate just how spectacular the 4499 is. Sonically, the 4499 is just a little bit cleaner. Percussion snaps are more immediate and don't hang out and interfere with anything else. And this is compared to the DAC that I consider to be the best DAC under $1,000. Spoiler alert, it's not anymore. I think while they do sound similar, the 99 is just bigger and better. Kind of the difference between watching something in 720p or 1080p. Higher definition, cleaner. And it's probably more like watching something in 720p and 4K. You can appreciate everything that's there with the 4493, but the 99 becomes a bit of an experience to behold. It's hard to really quantify the pure joy that I had from the 4499. I'll put it to you this way. Not only did I hijack my wife and make her sit down and listen to some Elton John, but I grabbed my stepson, had him sit down next to me, and we proceeded to listen to Korn Unplugged. Great album. If you haven't listened to the album, it's a nice way to ease yourself into the Korn pool. And the recording is spectacular. There is a ton of acoustic instruments. There's a ton of metallic instruments, bells, chimes, ton of harmonies. Amy Lee is on that record. The Cure is on that record. Robert Smith is, at least. There's Japanese taiko drums. There's all sorts of stuff on that record. And that was the record that I really did the heavy-duty comparison between the op amps with. Someone gave me crap in the comments about using Korn as a test track. It hurt my feelings. I felt like someone was calling my kid ugly. Anyway, listen to the MTV Unplugged album and tell me that that's not audiophile and it's not spectacular. 247 points of Falling Away From Me. It's when the song really gets up and going. And there's a piano. It was so utterly realistic, I almost got emotional. I did get emotional. My eyes actually teared up a little bit because it was so immersive, realistic. I said this like, it's kind of cliche to say it sounded like the band was in your room. It didn't sound like the band was in my room. It sounded like I was at the recording, like I was at their performance. It was emotional. And that's what this hobby's really about, right? I mean, yeah, we talk about products, we talk about gear, we talk about speakers, all this different stuff, but really at the end of the day, we're supposed to be getting an emotional response from the music. number one, I didn't want to stop listening to the music. I could have listened to it all day. Number two, I felt like I was hearing my recordings like a different version, maybe a remastered version or something, with the Sparkos op amps. With the other two op amps, it's spectacular. It's good, but with the Sparkos, it was like a brand new experience with all my music again. With the $44.99 and the Sparkos, it's the closest I've ever been to that song. Ever. I made my son listen to the Lena Hall cover of Creep. I got the chills. I got emotional. I started tearing up. My son got the chills. My wife, incidentally, when we were listening to Elton John, said, "Do you get to keep these?" And she was talking about the speakers. I said, "Well, it's not just the speakers." Well, she goes, "Whatever's going on, I like it." That's high praise from the wife. This is $170 more than the J2, either the Sabre or the AKM 4493 version. If you have the budget, I think that this is something that you should consider. But for my listening, my preferences, the $44.99 with the Sparkos op amp combination is really kind of end game for me. And at this point, you're probably saying, "Oh, you say that about every Geshelli Labs DAC, Randy." And I do, but it's not my fault they keep getting better. You're looking at a pretty big premium for the $44.99 and the Sparkos op amps. I think that's going to come in north of $300 more than the AKM 4493 or the Sabre editions. Do I think it justifies the price? Personally, absolutely. Yes, 100% for me. The 4493 gets me 85% of the way there. The 4499 gets me 15% further with the stock op amps. With the Sparkos op amps, we're now playing in a different stratosphere, a different universe. I don't really know what to say. I mean, I listen to music all the time, right? This is my job. All the time I'm listening to different components, different music. I listen to a lot of the same music though, so that I can tell differences in components. But today, I didn't want to stop listening. And usually I want to stop listening so I can go do something else. I haven't had that experience. The last experience I had that with was the very premium Michelle turntable, the Techno Deck. I had that experience with the J2 $44.99, and you can get that experience for a lot less than getting a Michelle Techno Deck T3 tone arm and the Goldring E4. That comes in about $3,100. The J2 $44.99 with the Sparkos comes in around a quarter of the price of that turntable rig back there. I don't know what anybody could possibly find wrong with the Sonics or the experience, the musical experience on this. It's spectacular. I'm flabbergasted. And I was already like that. The J2 AKM 4493 was already kind of like the epitome of what I wanted out of a DAC. And then the 44.99 comes along with the Sparkos and just like completely destroys my position. This was another aha moment for me in the hobby. There's just so much extra music out there in the recordings that you already listened to. It's just spectacular. Highest recommendation, of course. I love Gino and Sherry. I love what they're doing. Grandpa Joe, Rachel, Jake, the whole crew over there is awesome. And they continue to get better and better and better and put out better and better and better products at a price point that at this point just can't even be remotely competed with. I mean, how many companies are out there putting a $44.99 DAC out in the market already? And you can't count the pre-fire AKM 44.99s. This is a different chip, 44.99EX. Anyway, I don't know what else to say. It's 10 out of 10, sublime. You may not like how it looks. If you don't, you're missing out, because this is the best DAC under $1,000. So if you want to support the channel, you can sign up for Patreon. Patreon.com/cheapaudioman. Every Saturday night we have Patreon only Zooms, Patreon only Discord, Patreon only Facebook group. You can also use the links in the description. If you do buy the J2 $44.99, I do have an affiliate relationship with Geshelli, so I will get a commission if you buy this DAC. Also, buy me a cup of coffee. Put some money in the tip jar. Give me $1 or $2, but don't feel compelled to buy me anything. So don't binge watch anything on Netflix or Hulu. Please binge listen through the Geshelli Labs J2 AKM 44.99 version and fill your soul with happiness. And with that, I'm Randy. I'm the Cheap Audio Man.